prosecutor report that is issued on the Charles Adu Boahen issue, the Galamsey economy that he was supposed to investigate. He's done. I'm sure you've seen the report. What are your observations to start with?
Yes, Senator, I think yesterday when I spoke to you, I asked you a question whether you were sure that this was actually an OSP report, because I couldn't believe what I was reading. I think the OSP has turned what was supposed to be a straightforward investigation into something of a spectacular whitewash, and I am just completely surprised that the office of the OSP, this is actually a product that they are proud to put out in the public domain. I'm just completely surprised.
A spectacular whitewash.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Okay, so Senator, first of all, if you look at the report, it exhibits such low craftsmanship. When you set out to do an investigation, what you do is that first of all, you set out the issues to be investigated. And so when you write a report, the report now goes through the issues you set out to investigate and what you found. That's basically it. There's nothing more. So the Office of Special Prosecutor says he received a petition from the President of the Republic on one of his ministers. And then he received another petition. In fact, I think the petition, one came before the other. And as the originator of the documentary petitioned the OSP, I think on the 13th. He says he received it on the 15th, November 2022. The one day after the president, one day after Anas wrote his petition, the president also wrote his petition. Okay, one day apart. The two of them were thinking alike. So the issues laid out in the petition are not made known here in this report. We are just told that the president sent a petition against Adu Boahen. What were the issues raised in the president's petition that was set for investigation or that merited investigation? We don't know that. What were the issues raised in Anas's petition that was set for investigation? We don't know that. What were the issues that the special prosecutor itself set out to investigate? We don't know that. So, in the absence of that, I will attempt to do so. Okay. First was the fact that there were allegations of corruption against the former Deputy Minister for Finance, that he had engaged in an act that was deemed to be corrupt, and that he had taken money in the performance of his official duty. You can call that bribery or corruption. That he received almost $40,000 whilst he was away. So if that is the case, you want to find out how did, we all know when you travel abroad, you're allowed to carry a maximum of $10,000. So if I was investigating this, the question is, when you got the money in Dubai, what did you do with it? Did you shop with it? Did you carry the cash to Ghana? How did you declare it? So that's also an issue that you want to find out. Did you launder the money? You want to find out that. Is the money a gift or was it bribe? So if it was a gift, are there laws that govern gift? Are there gift tax? Were you supposed to pay taxes? So there's an element of tax evasion allegation also in there. There's an allegation that the vice president practices something they call appearance fees, and that when you come before him, you are supposed to pay $200,000 in the case of this, and that the allegation appears to suggest that the vice president, that is the practice that goes on at the vice president with the vice president in his office. So that's also another issue that you want to look at. There's also the issue, if you want to look at how did Adu Boahen spend that money? Did he bring it to Ghana or no. You also want to find out how did the investigator, who is a Ghanaian, manage to have that volume of money in a foreign country? Did he take the money from Ghana to Dubai, or did he also carry it? Did he declare it? Did he then go to Dubai and change it into dollars? How did that also happen? That the citizen also had that volume of money outside the jurisdiction for a project like this. There was also the allegation that some sort of the vice presidency or the vice president operates some sort of a modus operandi where you will have to go through projects like this. Will have to go through one of his brothers and relatives, and that is how he works. And so that was also a matter that was supposed to be investigated. And so you look at all of that, and so a report will say, we received a petition from two people, one day apart, the president suggesting that he wanted this particular issue to be investigated. We received a petition from Tiger IPI, also asking for ABCD to be investigated. Having read through these two petitions, these are the issues we set out for investigation. Okay? Then now you will come one after the other, what you found as far as those issues were concerned. What we are reading from the OSP report is his opinion and a narration of what actually we already know. We already know that there was a sting operation by a journalist. We know that the minister was lured into that sting operation. We know that offers were made. We know that money was collected. We know all of that. What we wanted to know was the evidence that backs all of those allegations. And so for the OSP to come back to narrate the whole thing and then seek to share his opinion on what he thought, there is this ridiculous portion of the OSP's report where he tries to do this analogy of if somebody left his phone in the car and you went to open his car and you went into the car and you picked it up and you realized that there was a phone and you took the phone and that is ridiculous. That has nothing to do with the report. You are supposed to investigate specific items. What Adu Boahen said, what the parties that were named in this investigation said, none of that. There's no proper conclusion because there's no evidence, there's no proper report. So you're left with no doubt that the OSP just wanted to do a whitewash. And that leads me into the conspiracy that I have always had, the theory that I have always had on why that particular documentary was aired in the first place last year.
You have conspiracies and theories, but I want before I'll come to your and I have noted it down. But first, so that I do not forget, what is your conspiracy or theory as to why the documentary was aired?
I'll tell you this, and this is not just a conspiracy; it's based on analysis. So this documentary was aired, was according to what we know, was conducted in 2018. Okay. Portions of it was aired. This particular one was not aired at all. It sat on the burner for so long. Then, when Kennedy Japan had his fight with Anas, he began to suggest that Anas had documentaries and he had to save the system, and that what some of the ministers were captured on video and the attempts to destroy the government, he had to come in and save the government. And that very important people in the government were targeted. Now, mark this word. At that time, the OSP was the lawyer for Anas. Okay? The current OSP was a lawyer for Anas. So within this material time, the 2018, when Anas did this investigation, he was a lawyer. He was a lawyer for Anas. So he knew all these things that were going on. Now, fast forward to 2021, the OSP is now appointed as the special prosecutor for Ghana. Okay? Out of then 2021, 22, out of the blue, we hear that all of a sudden the investigation that was done in 2018, which never saw the light of day, was now going to be aired. Now, a lot of people were asking questions, why now? I mean, Kennedy Japan talked about this long ago, 2019. Why is it that this investigation was kept in the burner for so long? And just around that time, when all this was raging, Kisieja, being the special prosecutor, was the one defending Anas as his lawyer and almost like a spokesperson with the fight with Kennedy in 2019. 2021, he becomes a special prosecutor. Now, by 2022, the government, my conspiracy or my analysis is this. The presidency and the MPP and the government realizes that Kennedy is nurturing a presidential ambition. And therefore, if he has all these audio and video and all of this that he keeps talking about, and he's going to contest with the vice president, they needed to find a way to get that documentary aired. Because Kennedy had already always talked about the fact that there were government people, top hierarchy of the government, that were caught up in this documentary. So all of a sudden, this documentary gets aired in 2022. Okay? Just when Kennedy was preparing to run and he was threatening that he was not going to step down for the vice president, this documentary gets aired. And a lot of people thought the documentary did not live up to the hype. And when that documentary was aired, before that there was a story in the Crusading Guide where a lot of people's names were left out. Okay? Now, the special prosecutor, who was at all material times in the know of this investigation way back in 2018, and who was the one fighting Kennedy Japan in 2019, now is petitioned by the president to investigate this matter. And he then comes out with this whitewash. The vice president is not invited. He's not even questioned at all. We don't, from this thing he has produced here, the vice president was not questioned. The allegation that there is some sort of appearance fee to be paid to the vice presidency before you appear that was not investigated. The issue about the modus operandi where the vice president's family members are the conduit for lobbying the vice president for projects is not investigated. There is this rather weird justification for the money that Adu Boahen took from a potential investor that was influence peddling. And that for me is ridiculous and laughable. A minister of state at all material times thinking that he was acting for the state, okay, determines that he wants 25% or 20% for his contribution in making the project work. While there, he collects money of $40,000. And you come back and say, oh, forget all about that. It was just influence peddling. What was the influence peddling? The narrative is that the investor was looking for someone who had influence to make sure the project worked. And he elected himself that I am the one, because I know the president, I know the vice president, I can make this work. On my part, I'm taking 20%. On the vice president part, paying $200,000 to go and see him. He did not take the $40,000 and the 25% because he was going to introduce them to the vice president. He took that for himself. And the special prosecutor comes out to say, oh, that's influence peddling. At the very least, when someone gives you something of money, valuable amount of $40,000 or something of substantial value, in order to induce you to do something, it's called bribery, at the very least. And if bribery had occurred, when a public officer uses his office or his position to try to do things that benefit himself, it is deemed as corruption. We are just having a new definition of these two terms given by the special prosecutor, that these are influence peddling. That's the definition, the new definition that the OSP is giving. So when you see this, the totality of what I've told you, the OSP moved from being an analysis lawyer to become OSP. Then this report surprisingly surfaces in 2022, even though it has been there since 2018, and Kennedy had been talking about it. Around that same time, Kennedy was nurturing his political ambition to contest for president, and they thought that that was going to be something that he will use against the vice president. I can tell you that all the appointments, plus the referral, plus all of these things happened because of this, that they were anticipating this to happen today. That's my theory.
So your theory is that they wanted to put, they essentially wanted to take that out of the hand of Kennedy at Japan.
Yes. They wanted to get that issue out, get it discussed, reference it to the special OSP. The OSP was already fighting Kennedy in 2019 over this report, okay? He already knew about it. He was one lawyer that, if anybody knew, he was the one. He gets appointed in 2021 to be the OSP, waiting that Kennedy his ambition will eventually metamorphose into a real one. And when they realized it was, they got the documentary out. They got a referral from the president himself. The president immediately removed Adu Boahen to make him look like the scapegoat. And there's this whitewash of a report coming from the special prosecutor. This is low craftsmanship. No serious office will write this as a report. The opinion is like lecture notes. When you read this one, it's like lecture notes, like the OSP was giving lectures and contests. Nobody cares. We are intelligent enough to know what the context and the background story is. What we need from you are the facts, nothing more, nothing less. If you go to court, you can go and say, okay, I'm prosecuting this case, and these are my contests. These are the. But at this point, where you want to inform the public, and you are writing a report of an investigation that has happened for almost a year, I think this is a complete waste of our time. This is a complete cover-up, and it's a whitewash.
And you got told that just by going through this report.
Yes, there's nothing in here. And you know what? The OSP also talked about heavily redacted people things over names. Okay, names that they did not want to know. I know the names. I know the names. Everything that he has redacted there, I know. Okay? And I feel like this is all done to cover up for people. They don't want the real story to be out there. There is no basis for the reduction. There's no evidence in this report that qualifies it to be a report from a high office like the office of the special prosecutor. There's nothing. He did not set out to investigate anything. That is why the report does not come out with anything.
And I wanted to ask you about those redacted portions, because where the OSP says I have done an investigation, found out the names of the other people involved. For an investigator like you, at what point do you then decide that I am redacting the names of some people, and will that not affect the facts that you are putting out?
See, people just use terminologies by heart. So there are times when you do redaction. For example, if a witness came to me and gave me very sensitive information, and I'm afraid that naming that witness will not add anything. However, his witness or his evidence is so important, and that not naming him will not take anything out of the investigation, but rather will cause harm or whatever to that person. You decide as an investigator to do a redaction. But you have seen people. You are saying that they are very primary witnesses. That there was a lawyer who was asked to conduct due diligence on these people before the meeting with the minister took place, and that lawyer's name is redacted. We don't even know. So if the lawyer did due diligence, what was the report? Was the report issued? What did the report say? We don't know anything about that. We just know that some lawyer did something and is redacted. We know that there was some officer at the Ministry of Finance who was the first contact. We know that there were some two people who initially participated in the meeting, and then subsequently they were dropped and another meeting was had with the minister alone. Those are redacted. What's the basis for that? Those are material people who are actually not just witnesses, they are participants. So a statement from them that we interviewed 18 witnesses. This witness A said A, B, C, D. Witness B said A, B, C, D. Witness C said A, B, C, D. Then, after all of that, you will come to a conclusion that based on all of this, the totality of the report we have just taken you through, we conclude with either low confidence or high confidence that the minister conducted himself in a corrupt manner, and that the money he took could be deemed as bribe or whatever, and that further investigation is required to find out how he spent that money, whether he laundered the money, whether he brought it through the airport, whether that was declared, whether that was beyond the threshold of what amount of money individuals can carry. All of that are supposed to be part of this report. And so this guy treats us like we don't know, nobody knows anything in this country, and you can just throw a report like that. You know, I've been one person that has always believed in the office, but this is a joke. And based on the conspiracy, the theory, the analysis I've just given you about how he got there and all of this, I think this was just to throw dust in the eyes of the public and just to cover up, basically.
So you've gone through the report, and I'm sure initially when the documentary came out, you watched it. Now, based on the report you've seen, what are the questions still in your mind that you expected a report to have addressed properly?
That's what I told you from the beginning. One, was there a conduct that was meritorious of corruption? And how did the investigation arrive at whether no or yes? That should be part of the report. So we now know that from this report that the minister took $40,000 abroad. Okay? Now, he took $40,000 abroad. How do you term that? The Office of Special Prosecutor is saying he is terming that as influence peddling. There's nothing like that under our laws. When an officer, a public officer, in the pursuit or in the performance of his official duties, takes something of substance that benefits him instead of the public, under our law, it is called corrupt conduct or it is called bribery, especially when that money is supposed to influence him to do something. Under the laws, it's called corruption or bribery. So I was expecting the Office of the Special Prosecutor to address that, because even the documentary itself, which formed the basis of the Tiger Eyes petition, suggested that that was a corrupt conduct. So in coming out with a report, this report should have answered that question. Was this a corrupt conduct or not? The Office of Special Prosecutor says that when a public officer collects money in the performance of his official duty, it is called influence peddling. This is ridiculous, coming from a lawyer. when we know that bribery is simply defined as the offer and acceptance of money or something of value to influence a public officer to act in a certain way, is called bribery. The public office or the Office of Special Prosecution wants us to call that influence peddling.
Radio Gold.
When a citizen collects money, whether it's a gift or not, even if you want to call it a gift, because in the documentary there was suggesting, was it a gift, was it a bribe, was it corruption? When somebody takes a gift, there are laws that affect gifts, and that law says that part of that has to be declared and taxes paid on it. So there's an element of tax evasion. When somebody says that the second most important public servant in this country, to appear before him, you need to pay what they call appearance fee of a whopping $200,000. You need to investigate that. You need, even if your idea was to clear the person, at least touch on it. Have a list of the people who have visited his office, and see, interrogate them. Interrogate the man himself. They were too afraid to even invite the vice president for questioning, so they avoided that. They avoided the mention of the fact that the vice president operates through his relatives, and that these things have to be routed through the relatives. They avoided that because they didn't want to invite any of them. How did that money get to Dubai? The $40,000 that was given to that gentleman, was it withdrawn from an account in Dubai? Which account? Was it taken in Ghana to Dubai? How did it get there? That is not answered in the document, in this document. So you realize from the report itself that he did not set out to investigate anything. Otherwise, all the things he set out to investigate would have first been stated in the first two paragraphs, that the OSC received a petition from these two people and set these issues for investigation based on the petition and based on our understanding of what the petition and the documentary sought to do. These are the issues we set out to investigate. And in doing so, we did this, and after all of that, we have come to this specific conclusion. What we are told is analogies, hypothetical situations, and what is that? Let us do the hypothetical analysis, because Senator, the OSP does not understand that undercover investigations for law enforcement is governed by different laws. The undercover investigation for the purposes of law enforcement is remarkably different from undercover investigation for journalism. These are two separate issues. When you investigate for the purposes of prosecution, it's completely different from when you investigate for the purposes of education and information. That's different. So I'm completely scandalized. He goes in there with this hypothetical situation. He rounds and he lectures everybody and concludes that the man committed influence peddling. And since influence peddling is not cannot be found under our laws, he's free to go. Case closed. Yes, that is what he's done.
So for you, Anas investigated for education and information. What he was supposed to do?
He was supposed
to take the document and make it
for the purposes of law enforcement.
Okay.
Okay. That is why he now needed to put. That is why Anas himself found it necessary to petition him. He needed to now explain what is the definition of a public officer that collects $40,000 in the performance of his duty. He needed to now do this investigation within the framework and context of law enforcement. And so he needed to explain all of this according to the law. Find information according to the law. If you read the investigation, he tells you what Tiger Eye set out to do. They are a PI company that does investigation for the purposes of exposing people and educating people. Okay, that is what the OSP itself said they were doing. So therefore, if he petitioned you, he himself recognizes that information that he has put out in the public domain needs to be put within the context of law and law enforcement. That is why they came to him. That was what the OSP was supposed to do. He's thrown water in our eyes. He dodged everybody, dodged the vice president, protected witnesses that were not supposed to be protected, ended up with this whitewash that he calls the report for all of us to read. I'm completely disappointed, to be honest. If the OSP's office is doing things like this, we should forget it. As a people, pack our things and go home.
Really? If this is the quality of work he's producing, then we cannot rely on the office.
Senator, I have written reports, okay? There's hundreds of them. And I'm expecting that a lawyer, listen, you go through an investigation for almost a year, okay? And you find that this report is classified for release to the public. And therefore, you are now going to inform the general public. This is not for internal consumption. The entire nation, with intelligence people, with investigators, with lawyers, with analysts, that is the time where you check every single thing to be sure that you don't make a mistake. To see that from 1.0 to the end, the office does not even take us through what he set out to investigate. It has not surprised me that he ended up with the conclusion of nothing. It's just a lecture. I hear it's a lecture too. This is like a lecture note, like a professor lecturing a student, and even veering into the issues about the court. The court said that Anas was practicing investigative terrorism. He found it necessary to respond on behalf of his client using this report. What has all of that got to do with this report? Was he writing the report as a lawyer for Tiger Eye? You wonder what he was doing here. And I know that the office could do better. I know they could do better. This was deliberate. They could not touch it. It was too hot. They just needed to throw dust into our eyes. And I'm telling you, they've done a bad job. After the things they have redacted, I know it. And there's no basis for them to have redacted it in the first place.
My interest is in the lawyer who did the due diligence.
So now we can talk about it. I can tell you. But you see, at the end of the day, look at where it takes us. It diverts the attention of everybody. Now we the citizens, now have to be persuaded. Who is this? Who is that? How do we make sense of this? That is all they are trying to do. They cooked this conspiracy. They were waiting for it since 2021 because they knew that the vice president would run, and all this was in the background. And when Kennedy decided he was going to run, they knew that this documentary needed to be aired. Otherwise, there was going to be trouble. If it came from Kennedy, the spin was going to be different. And you just imagine if that documentary didn't come out. Look at how acrimonious their contests have become. So they were right in that kind of thinking that this was going to be a problem. And the way they did it was to bring all the people who were involved. Tiger Eye was involved. The lawyer was involved. The presidency was involved. These people came together to form the OSP and to be the one to petition, and then they throw ice in the dust in the eyes of the public like this. This is ridiculous. I get offended with things like this. You know, I don't care about what these government people do anymore, but when you decide to write a report like this and put it out there for all of us to read, I get offended by this level of diabolic output.
Well, having said that, then let me shift you to one other issue, because you raised the issue of the primaries that is coming up this Saturday. Where do you think that is heading?
What do I?
Where do you think that will head? Like, who do you expect to emerge as the winner of the primaries, based on your own analysis?
Well, first of all, I think people need to comment Kennedy Japan because nobody gave him a dog chance. I kept saying from the beginning that this guy will go all the way to the finish. And I had a lot of friends who vehemently disagree with me and said, oh, they just wrote him off even before his ambition began. But one thing you can take from Kennedy, he's a very calculating, very deliberate, very consistent, very focused politician. Okay? You can say, oh, you can talk about all the negative things you want about him, but he's very focused. And I think that if you look at where he has come, and the people who are falling behind him, you must give him credit. If you look at what is going on, at this point, they are still fighting over photo album. The album for the election, different people have different albums. So you don't know what is really going to be the basis. But it looks to me, from the way things are shaping up, that Kennedy will do well. I'm not sure whether it will be well enough for him to win the nomination. But I think it will be to the credit of the NDC if the vice president wins, because he's a more vulnerable candidate as far as I am concerned.
Kennedy will do well.
And it looks to me that the presidency is bent on getting, or the government and its apparatus is bent on getting the vice president elected, because they realize that the current government hasn't delivered. They're looking for 13 years to deliver things that they promised to do in 4 years, and that the vice president will probably be the only person that could play ball once, if he will on that event become the candidate, or if he becomes the president. So it is just a quest to get someone who will be somebody they can control, somebody who will be a continuation of what they have done all these years, and somebody who will also cover up a lot of the things that they have done. I think that is the fixation, but that fixation will cost the party. Trust me. It's already started costing them. It will cost them even more.
So it's likely they will succeed as getting the vice president elected, but that will cost the NPP. How?
Yes. One, because the vice president is a very vulnerable candidate. This is a talkative. Okay. First of all, they got him talking, and he is still talking. This guy said everything that could be said in a campaign and delivered nothing. At the end, he's coming back to say the same things or to say different things than what happened to what you said before. The sound, and because he has so much talk, and because he's full of talk, there's so much soundbite, and the evidence and the soundbite does not support him as a credible candidate. So if he becomes a candidate, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. What will also happen is that if the vice president becomes the candidate, it will continue to generate more division and more apathy in the MPP. And all of these together will cost them very much.
But
talking is not going to cut it again in this election. When nobody knows you're a new candidate, you can talk about all the ideas you have, because it's not been tested, and it's believable because it's not been tested, and you're convincing enough. But when that idea has been put to test and it's failed miserably, you don't come back and make more promises that are believable. It's just common sense in politics. And as they say, politics is nothing but storytelling. The one who tells the best story will win the election. So the story is, this is a guy who came in from governor, okay? Didn't even rise to full governor properly. They took him and put him in charge of the economy. And he's run this economy for 8 years. And this is the result. These are all the things that he said. This is the result. He's coming back to say different things again. Is he believable or not? Is the question. Okay, so there's advantage when you are new, when you have fresh ideas, and when a government is in its second term and people are not happy about a couple of things. But it is a different ball game when you have been in that position for 8 years, and the things that you said you were going to do, you've not just failed at it, you've been worse at it. That is a difficult thing to sell in politics.
But let me read to you. This is, I think you were speaking in the Upper East Regional Capital of Bolgatanga, and these are the things he said. This is the Vice President himself. Among the four of us competing for flag bearer, I am the aspirant with the best track record in winning elections, having won 2 on the trot. I am the one with governance experience, serving as vice president for 2 terms. I am the one who can unify all the factions within the party. I am the one who can foster peace and unity between the 2 main religions in the country. This is what he says about it himself. And then continue to say, to crown it all, I am the one the NDC fears the most, and with good reason. They know with me as a candidate, they will not have a campaign message.
So listen, that's exactly the point. He himself realizes that having been in office for 8 years, you can no longer talk about fresh ideas and new ideas and lofty words. You will need to now confront your track record, because that is a springboard to a new message. That is, even if you are coming out with a new message, that has to come on the back of a very credible performance in the past 8 years. So he himself recognizes that. But it is okay for him to say all these things about himself, that he has the best track record. I thought they said that if you wanted to talk about people with track record in 2020, maybe in the MPP, he probably is the one with the best track record. But I want to ask him the same question when he says somebody like the former president John Mahama. If track record is that important, this is a man who has been vice president for 2 terms. He's been president and he's been opposition leader, and he's coming back. So if track record is important, you see, that's why I'm saying Bawumia will struggle. If track record is important, compare this. If track record and experience is important, compare this to the former president, who we now know is going to be his contender. How does that play out? The man has more track record and governance experience than you. You can say that in your party because you are the organ there. But when you get into the main frame, how does that compare to this? Then they are going to come to the main meat. What was the economy before? What is the economy now? What was the security situation before? What's the security situation now? These are the things that is going to play out. Before anybody can open his mouth about new ideas, they will be confronted with their track record and experience. And if there is anything to go by, this government is turning out to be the worst since independence. And for me, that is a big hill to climb. Sometimes I'm tempted to feel like they say these things, they want Bawumia because they don't want him to be completely out of the race. If the former president wins, he can still become the candidate. They just don't want him to fade out, because if he doesn't win now, then he can't contest again. But if these are the messages that he is going to come up with, in the past, you remember his 100 questions? It was because he was standing outside and throwing stones into the house. So it was okay, and it was believable that he asked those relevant questions. Now, people are going to ask you the same questions back because you are in the house and you've been here for 8 years. What will be your answer? And what will be the comparison of your performance against that one? You go and talk about COVID, and everybody is tired of hearing that. Okay? So at the end, it is going to be a difficult candidacy for the NPP. They know it. But I think that they still need to keep this candidate afloat, perhaps for post 2024. That will be 2028, I think. That's my honest assessment. I just feel like he talks too much, and when he's talking, he doesn't think like people analyze it. It's just like what the special prosecutor has just thrown out. They throw things out. They actually believe that people believe in hook, line, and sinker. The party people may believe it or may overlook it. But when it comes to election, where you are the candidate, the other time he was not even the candidate. He was the running mate on the sidelines raising red flags. Okay, this time he is the candidate, and it's a different ball game altogether. So I think they're going to do everything for him to win. I think Kennedy will do well, and I actually want him to do well because I think he fought a good fight. If he wins it, it will be remarkable. It will be really, really remarkable, and he needs to be given the credit if he wins it. But at this point, I think that he might do well, better than before, but maybe might be a little short of winning.